You know, Kim, I was thinking, I really want to start working out again, especially on my butt, but I don't have a lot of time. I wish there was a program that was fast, efficient, and really targeted my butt. In the past, when I've worked with trainers, they've just given me sets and sets of squats and lunges, which I really felt in my butt, but more in my legs and thighs. Do you know anybody that could help me?
It's interesting you saying that because a while back, I bought this book named Getting to the Bottom of It by Sylvester. And as the book title says, it talks all about working your buttocks.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more.
So if I remember, it's based on the order in which you do the exercises.
Oh, I saw this girl at the pool the other day with just the perfect backside.
Anyhow, why don't I grab my iPad? We can search for his name. Maybe he has a YouTube channel, videos on the topic. Well, maybe let's find out.
Sounds great.
Hello, my name is Sylvester, and I'm really excited to share with you an innovative fitness program that women of all ages are going to love. The name of the program is appropriately called Getting to the Bottom of It, and it's for women who want to target their hips, buttocks especially, and thighs. Aside from the aesthetic results you'll witness, this program will also help stabilize your spine and pelvis, which can help prevent many orthopedic issues that are so prevalent in today's society. Hopefully I sparked your interest. Let's talk about how I pioneered this groundbreaking program. In the early 1990s, I was working at a health club in the Boston area, and many women asked me how they can sculpt and tone their buttocks. They would often complain that the exercises they were given by trainers like lunges and squats would result in more fatigue in their thighs rather than their buttocks. It was at that point I had what some people refer to as an aha moment. I was involved in bodybuilding for many years and learned many training principles, one of them being pre-exhaust. This type of training is designed to target or stimulate a larger muscle like the gluteals or buttocks muscles, which would otherwise be held back by relatively weaker body parts during multi-joint movements like squats and lunges. I often give an analogy to help clarify this principle. How strong is a chain? As strong as its weakest link. In the case of training the buttocks, the weak link is the quads or the thighs. They tire out first before the buttocks muscles get their fair share. As alluded to earlier, the butt muscles are held back. In summary, the order in which you do the exercises in this program is crucial. The exercises are not done in a random fashion. The sequence of each exercise has physiological merit. Get it? If you don't, no big deal. You don't have to. Just perform the exercises and reap the benefits. Now, I want to dispel the fear that women have in regards to lifting weights and attaining big muscles. It's just not true. Simply put, a very low percentage of women have abundant levels of testosterone, the muscle-building hormone responsible for attaining large muscles. Let's talk about volume and intensity. Volume refers to the repetitions and sets you perform on any given exercise. Intensity is usually referred to as the amount of weight used on any given exercise. Most women performing a typical exercise program usually use high volume, high repetitions, and low weight or intensity. This training philosophy was most likely based on the myth that women will achieve large muscles if they train with heavy weights, which is unlikely, as I discussed. This is not to say that this type of training should not be included in comprehensive exercise program for the buttocks. On the contrary, there are a couple of factors that contribute to muscle shape: the size of a muscle and muscle density or firmness. Increasing the size of a muscle or hypertrophy represents a frequently reported response to resistance training and is characterized by an increase in the diameter of the individual muscle fiber. Physiologists agree that in addition to an increase in diameter of the individual muscle fibers, there is concomitant increases in the number of capillaries in a muscle, thus contributing to enlargement of the entire muscle. According to Stephen Fleck and William Kramer, authors of Designing Resistance Training Programs, high volume type training performed by bodybuilders increases capillary density. So I am in favor to the high volume and low intensity training protocol. But in addition, muscles also favorably respond to heavier weights and lower volume. And that this type of training increases the diameter of the muscle fibers, which contributes to the shape of a muscle. You can't shape the buttocks without some increase in muscle size. And again, we're not talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger size. The program I've designed includes both concepts, using moderate to heavy weights, obviously in a progressive manner, with lower volume. I also include high volume and lighter weights, or resistance bands. Variety is key when trying to maximize results and to get to the bottom of it. Now, let's talk about the hip muscles and the adverse effects it has on activating the buttocks muscles. We live in a culture where we sit for prolonged periods of time. In many cases, the muscles in the front of the hips, the hip flexors, can adaptively shorten, which many physiologists believe that this has a negative impact on the buttocks muscles, which in many cases deactivates the buttocks muscles which are on the opposite side. This is called reciprocal inhibition. They just shut off. We can't get them going. So obviously this is not a good thing. Given this fact, I've included stretches and self-massage techniques to avert this phenomenon. Enough said about the physiology behind the program. Let's get started. The Getting to the Bottom of the program has two levels, a beginner or home program, which you can do at home and requires very little equipment. All you will need is some resistance bands, which I will tell you where to get them later in the video. The other level is an advanced level, which involves training at a gym. So without any further ado, let's get started.
Before we start the exercise programs, we want to go over the movement potential of the hips. Why are we doing this? Because it's important to position your hips properly when doing the exercises we're about to display, as this will minimize injury to your lower back and ensure maximum recruitment of the glutes or buttocks muscles. As you can see, Gina is lying on her back or in the supine position. She is demonstrating an anterior pelvic tilt or arch. In other words, her lower back is moving away from the floor. The shortened muscles in this position are the hip flexors, or muscles in the front of the hip, and the lumbar extensors, or the low back muscles. The lengthened muscles in this position are the glutes, or buttocks muscles, and the abdominals. So if your goal is to activate the glutes and abs, this position strikes out as you cannot activate a muscle from a lengthened position. If you don't understand this now, you will as the video progresses. Gina is now demonstrating a posterior pelvic tilt, or rounding of her low back. In other words, the lower back is moving toward the floor or coming in contact with the floor. The shortened muscles in this position are the glutes, or the buttocks muscles, and the abdominals, or abs for short. The lengthened muscles in this position are the hip flexors, again the muscles in the front of the hip, and the lumbar extensors, or the low back muscles. So if your goal is to activate the glutes and abs, this is the position you want to be in to promote maximum recruitment of these muscles. Another benefit of this pelvic position is that it stretches the hip flexors, which can be prone to tightness when someone sits for long periods of time, like desk jobs that are so prevalent in today's society. Another example, which is part of the advanced program, is the top position of the hip thrust. The hips need to be in a posterior pelvic tilt to maximize recruitment of the glutes and minimize risk to the low back. Okay, let's move on to the exercises and get to the bottom of it.
We are now going to explain and demonstrate the Getting to the Bottom of It beginner program. This program is designed for the person who has limited or no experience with exercise. I do recommend consulting with a healthcare professional or at least a qualified personal trainer before attempting these exercises. The model who is going to demonstrate the exercises will tell you a little about herself and her background with exercise. I am honored to have her as part of the Getting to the Bottom of It video. And now, without any further ado, let's meet our beginner model.
Hi, my name is Beth Gifford. I'm an exercise physiologist, certified personal trainer, and a registered yoga therapist. I have been working in the health and wellness industry my entire adult life, and I love that I get to share my passion for health and wellness with others and help people to move with more freedom, better mobility, and find more joy and confidence through exercise, health, and wellness. This program, Getting to the Bottom of It, is unique in the order of the exercises help you to achieve maximum results. So Getting to the Bottom of It helps you to tone and strengthen your lower body, including thighs, and especially your glutes. The order of the exercise or the sequence helps to really recruit those glutes so that you get maximum results. It's very efficient. You can do it in 15-20 minutes 3 times a week and really reap some great benefits. So I hope you enjoy and find great results through this program. Thank you.
Make sure to perform these exercises in the order in which we are presenting them to you today. This will maximize the effect. Perform this routine 2 to 3 times per week on non-consecutive days. Let's warm up first.
We are rolling the hip flexors to help inhibit them so that we can activate our glutes more readily. So we're just going to come right up into the hip flexor area, move around a little bit. Once you find a spot that's tender, just melt down onto that spot, hold that position for about 30 seconds, and let that tension kind of melt away, ease off. Take some deep breaths. That signals your nervous system that it's okay. You're not having to fight against that. And it allows your body to respond and relax. You might move around, see if there's another spot you can find. And again, find a spot and let the weight of your body just hang on to that roller and ease away some of that tension. And then you would just repeat that on the other side. So we rolled the hip flexor, we released that tension, it's got the knot out. Now we're in a better position to be able to reach into that hip flexor to lengthen and stretch it out. So first thing you want to do is tuck that tailbone under. We want a posterior pelvic tilt. Then we're going to find some length, hand to your hip, reach up and over, and then turning your gaze toward that back elbow. Keep that tailbone tucking down. You're going to feel that stretch into your hip flexor. Both feet are also firming down into the floor, and that's just going to help you find that stability. Hold it for about 30 seconds. And then to deepen the stretch, you might take that back leg out a little bit. Again, reestablish that posterior pelvic tilt. Tuck that tailbone down, reaching up, lengthen, and then look to that back elbow as you rotate to that side. And you might find that deepens the stretch. And if you need to, you can always hold on to something for balance. So if you're feeling just a little off balance, just go ahead and put your hand on something, and that will help you to stabilize. So here we're aligned, legs are hip width apart. Sometimes you'll have the temptation of bringing that back leg in which actually will lessen the stretch. And then when you go into that stretch, you're not going to reach that same depth of stretch for the hip flexor. So you want to make sure that you're, if possible, in line with your pelvis squared, or even a little wide to get that deeper stretch. All right, so now we're going to put a resistance band on our ankles to help to now activate and strengthen our gluteals. So we're going to maintain some tension throughout, nose over navel, as we push and resist, push and resist. Trying not to rock or sway too much so that you're really getting that movement right out of those glutes. So you might have a tendency to want to sort of shift your weight, and so just want to resist that, maintain a nice, strong, stable core, make that movement come straight out of those glutes. Also, make sure you don't lose the tension. So you never want to step all the way in and lose that tension. Start from a point of tension and work within, maintaining some resistance in the band the whole time. And of course, even steps both ways. All right, so now that we've activated the glutes, we're going to build some strength by placing a resistance band on our thighs. And for a beginner, you'll do your posterior pelvic tilt, and just from here, keeping the pelvis firm to the floor, press out against the resistance of the band. We're coming up into your bridge, firming down into your feet, and holding that position. Pelvis stays steady as you press out against the resistance of the band. If your hamstrings feel like they want to cramp up, lift your toes and work from that position, and that often will release that want to cramp in your thigh. And these bands come in different resistance, and they're color coded, and this you can see on the screen where to purchase them. All right, so we pre-exhausted the glutes with the previous exercise. We're going to go right now into a sit to stand, band on the thighs. We sit, try not to rest if you can, just sort of come down and back up. You might even work to being able to just tap and lift back up. The legs stay as two parallel lines, firming against the strap. And the core stays really engaged. You want to keep that posture up. And sometimes the hands coming forward can help with that. And this is sort of a standard height chair. We can make it more challenging by coming over to a lower chair or a seat. And then the same thing, try to keep that tension, firming out into the strap. Keep that chest up, try not to bow over. So we're keeping those legs hips width apart, pressing out against the band. What we don't want to do is let those legs collapse in and let those knees come together at all. So the whole time you're firming out against the band, that helps you to maintain proper form and engage the muscles more efficiently. And that's why we have the band on.
Now proceed to the following exercises immediately or as your fitness level allows. These exercises are performed with one leg, so they target your buttocks or glutes a lot more intensely. Perform the first exercise, the clamshell, on the right leg as shown, and then immediately perform the one leg deadlift with that same right leg. Then repeat sequence on the left leg. Let's look at these exercises in more depth.
So next exercise is the clamshell. We want to make sure that our hips are stacked, with a little space under the waist. We keep that resistance so that the knees are never coming together. And then we rotate and press against the resistance of that band. And you want to think you're really moving through your glutes, so try not even to push too hard from your feet, but make that movement come right out of the glutes. One mistake you'll often see is people dropping that hip back, and so we want to make sure that we keep the pelvis so that the hips are stacked and not let ourselves fall back or drop back. So we can use the wall to help keep us in form. So if we're against the wall, we are not going to be able to drop that pelvis back at all. So we're really working through the glutes. We're maintaining that alignment in our pelvis, and the wall keeps us honest. So we're gonna start with 10, work up to 15. Once that becomes easy, you'll go to the next resistance level. And so there are several different levels of resistance depending on the band that you choose. So yellow is the lightest, and then you would graduate to the next level. Okay, so we just finished the clamshell on the right. Now we're gonna stand on our right leg for a single leg deadlift. We hinge from the hip as if we were a seesaw. So as that leg reaches back, that chest reaches forward. And we're just coming to the chair, and we want the chair close so that our hands are just under our shoulders and we're not reaching out. You do want to keep a nice strong core, and think about that tailbone is sort of tucking down a little bit to help you really engage and recruit those glutes. Your knee may need to bend more or less depending on your flexibility. Once we've completed the reps on this leg, we're going to go back down, do clamshells for the left side, and then do our deadlifts with our left leg supporting us. The other thing you want to make sure you're not doing is that you're not collapsing or rounding the spine. So you're engaged and you're staying strong, head to heel, moving as one solid line. So we want to make sure that we're hinging from the hip, lead with the foot. You don't want to lead with the back and then raise the foot up. So you're moving from a nice straight line, like you're the board and here's your pivot. You may need to hold on to a wall in the beginning, or maybe forever, to help with balance, and that's okay. Congratulations, you completed the program. Now it's time to stretch. So we're gonna come to a hip stretch by sitting, crossing the ankle above the knee, flex the foot, so the shin toward the knee, sit up nice and tall. You're gonna feel that stretch throughout your hip. If you need a little less stretch, you could lower that leg by bringing the foot out a little bit. If you need a little more stretch, you could lift your heel or hinge in a little bit. You're gonna hold this stretch for about 30 seconds, and you just wanna find a nice amount of tension, not pain. So after 30 seconds, then you can turn toward the knee, give it a hug. So the chest is toward the knee and you're sitting nice and tall and firming that knee into your hand, and that will activate that stretch in that hip nicely. Hold that again for 30 seconds and then go to the other side.
So that is the beginner getting to the bottom of it program. I want to thank Beth for doing such a great job demonstrating and explaining the exercises.
The time has finally come to explain and demonstrate the Getting to the Bottom of It advanced program. This program is very difficult and highly recommend consulting with a healthcare professional, or at least a qualified personal trainer before attempting these exercises. The extremely fit model who is going to demonstrate the exercises will tell you a little about herself and how long she's been training. I am honored to have her as part of the Getting to the Bottom of It video. Now, without any further ado, let's meet our advanced model.
Hi, my name is Regina O'Brien. I've been in strength training for about 17 to 20 years. In fact, I've actually been in numerous bodybuilding competitions. I'm 56 years old. Exercising and weight training has become the way of life for me. It has so many health benefits as well as looking and feeling better. I've incorporated my Getting to the Bottom of It program in my workouts. Although I was familiar with many of the exercises, I didn't realize how important the order in which you do the exercises are to maximize the results and target the butt. I really felt my glutes. So let's get started on this journey together and get to the bottom of it.
We are at Encompass Fitness in Marlborough, Massachusetts, where we'll be performing the Getting to the Bottom of It advanced exercise program. I want to thank Scott Cotter, owner of the gym, for letting us use his facilities. Make sure to perform these exercises in the order in which we are presenting them to you today. This will maximize the effect. Perform this routine 2 to 3 times per week on non-consecutive days. Let's warm up first. Before you start, you want to foam roll and stretch the muscles of the front of the hips. These muscles can be prone to adhesions or knots, and as a result, these muscles are shortened. This in turn can inhibit the glutes from firing properly, as I alluded to in my introduction. Stretching will not untie these knots, so to speak, but deep tissue massage will. Since not everyone is likely to get a massage regularly, self-myofascial release, or SMR, is a more practical solution. Simply put, using a foam roll to break up these adhesions or knots, which can impede normal range of motion. Once you break up the adhesions, you're in a better place to stretch. Stretching alone without foam rolling will cause the knot to get tighter. As you can see, Gina is demonstrating how to foam roll the hip flexors. You want to roll very slowly until you find a tender spot. Most people roll too fast. Once you find the tender spot, roll over it repeatedly for about 30 seconds. This is usually the amount of time it takes to calm the tender spot down. And of course, repeat this approach on the other leg. Now that we got the knots out of the hip flexors with the foam roll, we can now stretch the hip flexors. The stretch Gina is doing is called the triplanar hip flexor stretch, because it stretches the hips in all 3 planes or directions, as you will see. We don't just move in one direction or plane, so the first thing you do is position your pelvis in a posterior pelvic tilt, like we talked about. Move the hips in the direction of the arrow. This will promote a posterior pelvic tilt and stretches the heck out of the hip flexor before you even move. Staying in this pelvic position will discourage arching, which defeats the purpose of the stretch. Now, move forward as much as you can, which most people can't move too far. Now, raise your right arm above your head as high as your flexibility allows, and then slowly side bend to your left, and pause for a few seconds. Then slowly rotate, as Gina's demonstrating. Make sure you keep this forward position along with the posterior pelvic tilt while side bending and rotating, as this will maximize the stretch. You should really feel this stretch in the front of your hip. Repeat a few times and then perform on the other leg. Tip number 1, hold on to a stable object. If you are new to this stretch, you may want to hold on to a stable object with your free hand for balance and eventually let go when you're able. Tip number 2, move your back leg outward and squeeze your glute. If you rotate your back foot outward, this will internally rotate your right hip and will heighten the stretch. So this is how the lower leg should look if you want an increased or heightened stretch of the hip flexor, the front of the thigh. Also, if you squeeze your right glute in this case, it promotes reciprocal inhibition, which is a fancy way of saying it causes the opposite muscle, the hip flexors, to relax. So to review, we first inhibited or shut off the often overactive hip flexors using the foam roll. Then we stretched them. Now we want to activate the glutes by doing some monster walks with tubing. As you can see, Gina's walking side to side. What commonly happens though is a lot of times people bring their feet in too close and they don't keep the tension on the band. We want to keep the tension on the band. The other common mistake is that people wobble left and right versus keeping their nose over the navel, which is a verbal cue I often use. When walking forward and back, what happens a lot of times is people don't keep the tension on the band walking forward and back. And when you walk back, you want to try to get a little bit of a hip you want to really emphasize bringing your legs far apart when you're walking back. So that's the monster walks to activate the glutes. Now that we have the warm-up behind us, let's start the strength exercises for getting to the bottom of an advanced program. The first set of exercises that Gina will perform are what we call bilateral, or done with 2 feet on the ground. This will allow Gina to maximize the weight she can lift to elicit a growth response in the muscles. The next set of exercises that she will do will be performed on one leg or unilaterally. This can limit the amount of weight she can use, but can really target and burn the glute or buttocks muscles. Okay, Gina's now demonstrating the hip thrust. She's got her lower shoulder blades against the edge of the bench. Some people like to go the other way, the lengthwise, but this was easiest for us to set up. So she has no, as you can notice, she has no foam pad on the bar, which we would suggest people to do, but we were doing a lighter weight just for the demonstration. And she's got her head looking straight ahead, thanks to Brett Contreras. A shout out to Brett for pointing that out to me. That's going to promote less lumbar extension and more of that posterior pelvic tilt in the pelvis. So her knees are about hip width distance apart with her feet flared out about maybe 10 to 15 degrees. So she's going down, she's still keeping her head forward, and as she comes up, she goes into that posterior pelvic tilt that we talked about earlier. I want to highly encourage anyone doing this exercise to do it slow and deliberate. The hips need to be in a posterior pelvic tilt, as yellow arrow indicates, to maximize recruitment of the glutes and to minimize risk to the lower back. The tilting of the pelvis will promote hip extension, not lumbar extension or arching of the back. There are some techniques you can use to make this exercise more effective, like holding at the top for 5 to 10 seconds after you completed 8 to 10 reps, or do some pulsing at the top for 5 to 10 reps. You want to feel a real burn in the glutes before doing the next exercise. Okay, the next exercise in this superset is the Romanian deadlift. Gina is going to use a kettlebell, but you can certainly use a barbell. Remember, there is no rest after the hip thrust, so you may want to get the kettlebell ready and have it next to you. We chose the Romanian deadlift over the regular deadlift as I think this targets more the posterior chain muscles, particularly the glutes and hamstrings. So basically, this type of deadlift primarily pivots at the hips. We are going to show her in slow motion for demonstration purposes. As you can see, Gina has a slight bend in her knees with little or no change in knee flexion during the entire set. In other words, her knees maintain the same bend throughout the exercise. Her legs are approximately hip width distance apart. Her back is not rounded and her weight is on her heels, not on her toes. She is not excessively extending her neck or looking up, which places undue stress on her cervical, spine, or her neck. At the top of the movement, she squeezes her glutes by performing a posterior pelvic tilt as we discussed. Again, choose a weight that elicits extreme fatigue and burn in your butt at 8 to 10 reps. After Gina finishes her hip thrusts, for the second set, she goes into her goblet squats. As you can see, she's going down perfectly, her elbows in between her knees. Her knees are not bowing in. She's got a wide stance. She's coming straight up. There is no butt winking that we're witnessing with Gina. Now, when doing a squat, especially when doing deep ass to the grass, some people's lower back excessively flexes or posterior tilts. We call that a butt wink. This can be harmful to the spine, especially if you're doing a loaded squat with a good amount of weight. It can also decrease force production. What causes the butt wink? Most experts believe it's an anatomical deficiency, for the most part. When you squat down, your hips flex and your thigh bone, the femur, moves towards your torso. The further you go down, at least in some people, the femurs tend to hit the anatomical end range, and as a result, the spine compensates by going into a posterior tilt or a butt wink. If I see this happening, I encourage my clients to stop at that point prior to the butt wink, especially if they're loaded with weight. Yes, you may sacrifice some range of motion, but you'll protect your spine and your lower back. Okay, now it's time to do the one-leg exercises or unilateral exercises. By the way, uni means one. Think of unicycle here. All the following exercises are done with the same leg. No rest between exercises. This is what we call a giant set. We're going to start this giant set with the right leg. So all the following exercises you see here are done with the right leg. Then we repeat the giant set with the left leg. The giant set starts with Gina doing the one-leg bridge. She's working her right leg, as I alluded to earlier. I'm showing it with her left hip bent at 90 degrees. Or put another way, her left knee is pointing towards the ceiling. As you can see, her back is in an arched position. But if she brings that left knee closer to her chest, it positions the spine or low back in a better position, less arching. After Gina completes 10 reps, she will then pulse 5 times per rep at the top, or do small range reps at the end of the movement for 5 to 10 additional reps, or however many reps you can tolerate. At this point, that right glute should be feeling a 5-alarm fire. After completing the one-leg bridge, you want to immediately perform this exercise, the dip and bird on the right leg, while holding a kettlebell heavy enough to elicit a fatigue at 8 to 10 reps. We're showing this exercise in slow motion for teaching purpose, but it's not a bad idea to maintain this slow pace, as you're going to feel it much more. I learned this exercise from a physical therapist I used to work with. It is a great exercise for someone who has a knee issue and they still want to work their glutes, as this exercise pivots primarily at the hip. Matter of fact, if the buttocks muscles are weak, particularly the gluteus medius, the muscle on the side of the hip, it can cause the knee to bow inward, what we call knock knee or valgus knee, whereby causing abnormal forces at the knee joint. As you can see, Gina's left leg is slightly behind her. She has the majority of her weight on the right foot, more specifically on her right heel to midfoot, not on her toes. Think of her left leg as a kickstand, bearing about 20% of her weight. It helps with balance, basically. Her back is not rounded. Her upper body, from her head to her hip, which she's hinging from, forms a straight line. Her knee is bent at around 5 to 10 degrees and maintains that angle throughout the movement. After performing the dip and bird, Gina immediately performs this exercise, the one-leg Romanian deadlift, or RDL, in which she chose a weight that will elicit fatigue at 8 to 10 reps. Remember, all the exercises in this giant set are performed on the same leg, in this case, her right leg. Upon completion, she performs these same exercises on the left leg. As you can see, Gina is standing on her right leg and holding the kettlebell with her left hand. We encourage you to hold on to a stable object for balance if you are new to this exercise. Again, we are displaying this exercise in slow motion for educational purposes. She is pivoting at the hip and not rounding her spine while she lowers the kettlebell toward the floor. She is placing her weight on her right foot, again specifically on her heel to midfoot, not on her toes. Her right knee maintains a slight bend throughout the exercise. Remember, this is not a squat, so you should only pivot primarily at the hip. One last thing, when bringing the kettlebell toward the floor, keep your shoulders parallel with the floor. Avoid allowing the arm holding the kettlebell, in this case the left, to tilt the left shoulder downward, as this will create a rotational force in the torso and increase the likelihood of injury, as well as throw off your balance. After performing the one-leg RDL, Gina immediately performs the clamshell and chooses a resistance band that will elicit a fatigue at around 30 to 60 seconds. I asked Gina how she was feeling, and if you can read lips, she's saying burn. And why wouldn't she feel a burn? She just did the one-leg bridge, the dip and bird, and then the one-leg RDL, and now the clamshell, all on the same leg. Damn! With no freaking rest between. The only thing missing from Gina is a cape. She's a superwoman, man. So as you can see, you want your head in proper alignment. That's why Gina has her head on a pad, or you can just use a rolled up towel. If you don't allow the knees to touch at the bottom of the movement, you will keep the tension on the band, which will heighten the burn on the glute. Again, she is laying on her left side, so she's still working on her right glute. The biggest mistake I see people do on this exercise is they roll their hips backwards when they lift the top leg. This is a compensation and will greatly reduce the effectiveness of this exercise. Your hips are bent at about 30 degrees, but you may want to change it up by performing this exercise at different angles to target the glutes in different ways. Move slow and deliberate. We finally come to the last exercise in this giant set, which is the step up. To determine the height of the step or plyo box, stand close to it as shown here. It is our recommendation that you choose a step that is approximately knee height. Yes, you can choose a higher step, and as a result, you can recruit the glutes more due to greater hip extension. But you put your knee at a higher risk for injury, as it can place the knee in greater flexion or bend, which increases the load on the knee. Place your right foot on the platform so the entire foot is in contact with the step. Gina's left foot is about a foot back, and as she steps up, she touches her foot very briefly on the step and then steps back down on her toes, then immediately steps back up on the step. Be sure to place the majority of your weight on the right heel to midfoot. Avoid allowing your right knee to move forward too far, as this will cause your right heel to rise off the step and places more stress on the quads, the front of the thigh, and the knee joint. Choose a weight that elicits fatigue at the 8 to 10 rep range. If you are new to this exercise, you may want to use a step that's not as high. Also, you may want to use no weights at all and perfect proper form first. Now that we've finished the entire program, it's time to really empty that gas tank completely and do one more exercise, the bridge with hip abduction with a mini band. Place a band around your knees, then lift your hips and spread your knees apart. We call this hip abduction. So you are working your gluteus maximus when lifting your hips up. Then when you spread your knees apart, you're working your gluteus medius and minimus. So this move hits all 3 butt muscles. It's like triple duty for the booty, to bastardize a phrase that Dr. Brett Contreras, the glute guy, uses. Use a band that will elicit a fatigue at 10 to 15 reps. Upon fatigue, rip off the band and put a lighter band on, and continue for an additional 8 to 10 reps, or as many as you can tolerate. After completing this set, take the band off and place an even lighter band around the knees and finish up with an additional 8 to 10 reps, or as many as you can. This is called a breakdown set. At this point, your butt muscles should be on fire. If not, use heavier bands or higher reps, or both. So that is the Advanced Getting to the Bottom of It program. I want to thank Gina for doing such a fantastic job demonstrating the exercises.
Sorry, gonna hate me. Where do I take from here? Director, where do I go?
Messed up on that last thing, but I could bring back some of the other one and cut and paste. I could do that, right?
Oh, I look straight ahead. I don't
Yeah,
look.
you look there.
Okay.
Don't let this. Do you want me to shut that off?
Yeah.
Should I
Yeah.
move this?
Yeah, maybe turn it
Yeah.
so I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to distract me, but it did. But yet it did. Okay.
Yes, that's it. It's a wrap.
You sure?
Perfect.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah? You didn't hear my knees cracking?
I heard the video.
And that's one thing I wanted to say, actually. I'm glad you reminded
Stabilization
me. Yeah.
of the joints.
One thing that is a sort of an offshoot, when I didn't even realize it when I wrote the book, is that strong glutes actually are very good for knee prevention, knee pain prevention. You know, a lot of people have knee problems. Think of the glutes as a steering wheel, and your knees as the tires. If your glutes are not working or they're not strong, the tires wear out. It's like having poor alignment. So if you got strong glutes, it actually can help prevent, in many cases, knee issues in the future, especially degenerative changes, because the forces are abnormal when you don't have good, strong glutes, or if your foot rolls in too much. And the one-leg postures that are on this video can help promote strength in the foot and stability, like you say. Got to have stability, man, you know,
Absolutely.
in your life, emotionally and physically.